She was told to sit down and stay silent, but when the spotlight found her, one note changed everything. 16-year-old Lily Carson had always been different from the others. While most kids her age spent their time on social media or hanging out after school, Lily found her comfort sitting at the old upright piano in her family's small living room. Every key felt like home. She didn't just play music, she lived it. From the age of 8, she would close her eyes and get lost in melodies, often staying up late just to play a few more notes. Her favorite composer was Chopin. To her, his music wasn't just beautiful, it was emotional. It's powerful and full of life. Lily's dream was simple. She wanted to perform Chopin's Ballade, one at her school's annual music showcase. It was a big event. Hundreds of students, parents, and even some local news people would attend. It wasn't just another school performance. It was a chance to be seen, to be heard, and for Lily to finally prove she had what it took. She had been preparing for the showcase for over 3 months. Every morning before school, every afternoon after homework, and every weekend, she practiced. Her fingers would cramp, and sometimes she even played until tears rolled down her cheeks. But she didn't care. She believed in the piece. She believed in herself. And above all, she believed that hard work would eventually be noticed. Lily's coach, Mr. Howard, was a respected piano teacher at the school. He had trained dozens of students over the years, and many of them went on to win regional competitions. But he was also known for being extremely strict. Praise was rare. Smiles were almost never seen, and kindness, that seemed like a forgotten language to him. He ran rehearsals like a military drill, cold, precise, and full of criticism. From the very beginning, Mr. Howard had doubts about Lily's choice. Chopin's Ballade No. 1, he had said, raising an eyebrow during their first practice. That's not a beginner's piece. Even professionals struggle with it. I know, Lily had replied softly, her voice almost a whisper, but I've been practicing for a long time. I really want to play it. He didn't say much after that. He just nodded and gestured to the piano. Show me. And she did. Lily poured her heart into every note. It wasn't perfect. Her tempo wavered at times. She struggled slightly during the fast passages. But there was something real in her performance, something raw, something honest. But Mr. Howard didn't seem impressed. He gave her a list of corrections and told her to start over. From that day onward, their lessons became more intense. He never smiled, never praised, only pointed out flaws. Lily tried not to let it affect her. She reminded herself that he was hard on everyone, that he was just trying to push her to be better. But inside, it hurt. She began to wonder if he even believed in her. As the weeks went by, the pressure grew. Other students started rehearsing too. Lily could hear them in the practice rooms playing pop songs, jazz numbers, duets. Most of them were cheerful, energetic, fun. But Lily's piece was different. It was serious, deep, emotional. She didn't just want to entertain, she wanted to make people feel something. Some of the other students started talking. Why is she playing something so complicated? One of them whispered. Mr. Howard is going to kill her with his criticism, another one said. Lily heard them. She tried to ignore it, but their words stayed in her mind. Still, she didn't quit. She practiced even harder. She played the piece. With headphones on, in the library's piano room, she recorded herself at home, listened to the mistakes, and fixed them one by one. Her fingers began to move more confidently. Her expression changed when she played. She wasn't just reciting notes, she was telling a story. Then came the final rehearsal. It was held in the school auditorium, 1 week before the actual performance. Every music student had to perform their piece in front of the teachers, and some of the older students for a trial run. Lily was nervous, but she was ready. She had practiced for hours the night before. She had barely slept, but she told herself, this is it. This is your chance to show them all. As she walked up to the stage, her heart pounded. Her hands trembled slightly as she sat at the grand piano. The lights above were bright. The room was silent. She closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and began to play. And for the next 7 minutes, the world faded away. Lily's fingers danced over the keys. Her body swayed with the rhythm. The music flowed through her like electricity. She felt every rise, every fall, every emotion. The auditorium remained still. No one moved. No one spoke. It was as if time itself had paused to listen. When she finished, she sat frozen for a second, her hands still resting on the keys. She looked up. There was silence. And then light applause. Nothing wild, but enough to let her know she had done. Well, she looked over at Mr. Howard, hoping for a nod, a smile, a simple well done. But he stood with a stern face and said nothing. Later that day, Lily was called into the music room for a private meeting with him. She walked in with a hopeful heart, thinking maybe he wanted to go over final adjustments. Instead, he sat her down and said, "Lily, I've decided to replace your solo with a duet performed by Rebecca and myself." She blinked. "Wait, what? You're not ready?" he said flatly. "There were hesitations in your transitions, some minor tempo slips, and I don't want the show to end on a weak note." Lily's throat tightened. "But I've been practicing this for months." Mr. Howard shrugged. Sometimes effort isn't enough. Rebecca will play a simpler piece. It'll be cleaner, more professional." Her heart sank. She felt like the floor had disappeared beneath her. "But that was my moment," she whispered. He didn't respond. Lily left the room with tears. In her eyes, she sat on the steps outside the auditorium for what felt like hours. Ouch. Her fingers, the same ones that had given life to the music, now felt numb. Students passed by, some offering awkward glances, others pretending not to see her. That night, she didn't touch the piano. For the first time in months, the house was silent. But somewhere deep inside her, a small fire still burned. A quiet anger. A feeling that something wasn't right. That maybe, just maybe, Mr. Howard wasn't being honest. That he hadn't pulled her from the program because she wasn't good, but because he didn't want her to outshine him. After all, he was playing with Rebecca in the duet. Was it really about music or about control? Lily didn't have the answers, but what she did have was a quiet promise to herself. This wasn't over. Not yet. Lily couldn't sleep that night. She kept staring at the ceiling, eyes wide open, heart heavy. All her hard work, all those long hours, the sore fingers, skipped outings with friends, everything felt wasted. Mr. Howard had simply cut her off from the performance like she didn't matter. He hadn't even given her a chance to explain or ask for another try. His decision was final. He made it seem like she was a disappointment, like she wasn't good enough. The words kept echoing. In her mind, "You're not ready." She didn't tell her parents right away. They'd been so proud of her. Her mom had already picked out a dress for her to wear on the night of the show. Her dad had taken time off work to be in the front row. Telling them would only break their hearts. So she stayed silent. But inside, she was drowning. The next day, then stayed. At school, the news spread fast. Some students were surprised. Others weren't. A few even whispered, told you it was too hard for her. Lily heard it all, but said nothing. She walked through the halls quietly, trying to hide the sadness behind her eyes. Rebecca, the girl who would now be performing in Lily's place, wasn't cruel. In fact, she even approached Lily during lunch and said, "I'm really sorry. I didn't ask for this. Mr. Howard just told me yesterday." Lily nodded politely and said, "It's okay." But it wasn't okay. It hurt. During music class that afternoon, Mr. Howard walked in with his usual cold expression. "Everyone, remember, we are 1 week away from the showcase," he said. "Final lineup changes have been made. Let's stay focused." He didn't even mention Lily. It was like she had been erased from the plan. She sat at the back of the room, feeling invisible. But not everyone ignored what had happened. Mrs. Benton, a soft-spoken and warm-hearted music teacher who worked mostly with the choir students, had noticed Lily's absence from the performance list. She had been in the auditorium during the rehearsal and had seen Lily's playing. She knew it wasn't perfect, but it was beautiful. There was something honest and emotional in Lily's music that couldn't be faked. Later that day, Mrs. Benton found Lily sitting alone on the benches outside the music room. She sat beside her and said, I heard about the change. I'm really sorry, Lily. Lily gave a small nod, not trusting herself to speak. I watched you play, Mrs. Benton continued. What you did wasn't just skillful, it was powerful. You made people feel something. That matters more than perfection. Lily looked at her, and for the first time in a day, she felt seen. I know Mr. Howard can be difficult, Mrs. Benton added gently. But sometimes, even experienced teachers make mistakes. Lily finally spoke. He said I wasn't ready, that my performance wasn't good enough. Mrs. Benton shook her head. You were ready. I've been at this school long enough to know when a student is just playing notes and when they're telling a story. You told a story? Lily's eyes watered, but she quickly wiped them. It doesn't matter now. I'm not in the show. Mrs. Benton smiled softly. What if you could be? Lily looked up, confused. What do you mean? The final schedule? Isn't officially locked yet, Mrs. Benton said. Only Mr. Howard thinks it is. I spoke with Principal Jensen earlier. I asked him to consider letting you play one piece, just one on the night of the performance. He was unsure at first. But I showed him your rehearsal video. He agreed. Lily's heart stopped for a second. Wait, what? He said yes. Mrs. Benton nodded. Yes, but there's one condition. You'll be the surprise final act. It won't be announced ahead of time. You'll have to prepare on your own without Mr. Howard. What? Lily couldn't believe it. She was getting a second chance. Not because someone felt sorry for her, but because someone actually believed in her talent. But what if Mr. Howard finds out? Lily asked nervously. Mrs. Benton leaned in and said, Let that be my problem. You just focus on playing like I know you can. That night, Lily went home and sat in front of her piano. For the first time in days, she lifted the cover, placed her fingers on the keys, and began to play. Not because she had to, but because she wanted to. This time, there was no pressure, no coach watching over her shoulder, no judgment. It was just her and the music. She practiced differently now. Instead of chasing perfection, she focused on feeling. She slowed down the parts where she used to rush. She added emotion to the sections that once felt robotic. She even started recording herself again and listening late at night. Every day, her connection to the piece grew stronger. She wasn't just practicing a performance, she was building her moment. In school, she remained quiet. Only Mrs. Benton and Principal Jensen knew about the plan. Rebecca continued her duet rehearsals with Mr. Howard, and he walked around proudly, as if everything was under control. But something in Lily had changed. She didn't feel small anymore. She was preparing for something bigger than just a school performance. She was preparing to take back her voice. The week passed quickly. On the day of the performance, the entire school was buzzing with excitement. Posters were everywhere. Parents were arriving in large groups, and the auditorium was being decorated. Students were running back and forth in their costumes, instruments in hand. Mr. Howard stood near the backstage area, clipboard in hand, directing everyone like a commander. Lily arrived quietly, wearing a simple dress and carrying her music sheet, though she didn't need it anymore. She knew every note by heart. Her parents were already seated inside the auditorium, still thinking she wasn't performing. She had wanted to surprise them too. Mrs. Benton found her backstage and smiled. You ready? Lily nodded, heart pounding but eyes steady. I think so. Good, Mrs. Benton said. You'll be called after the final listed act. Don't rush. Don't worry about the crowd. Just breathe and let the music speak. Lily waited quietly behind the curtain. One by one, the performances. Happen songs, duets, solos. Rebecca and Mr. Howard played their duet about halfway through the program. It was nice, clean, technically correct. Something was missing. There was no soul in it. It felt more like a lesson than a performance. Finally, as the scheduled acts ended, the principal walked onto the stage. He held a microphone and smiled. At the audience. Before we close tonight, he said, we have one last surprise for you all. Someone who has shown great dedication, passion, and talent. Please welcome Lily Carson. Gasps echoed through the audience. Mr. Howard, standing in the wing, turned sharply. His face tightened. He looked as if he wanted to object, but it was too late. Lily stepped onto the stage. The lights hit her face. The room went silent, and she walked toward the grand piano. Heart pounding, hands sweating, but more ready than she had ever been in her life, she sat, took a breath, and placed her fingers on the keys. The moment was hers. Lily sat on the piano bench with the bright stage lights shining down on her face, making it hard to see the crowd. But that didn't matter. She didn't need to see them. She could feel them. Hundreds of eyes staring at her, waiting, curious. The entire auditorium had fallen completely silent. You could hear a pin drop. She took a deep breath and gently placed her fingers on the keys. For a moment, time stopped. Then she began to play. The first notes of Chopin's Ballade, No. 1 filled the room soft, delicate, like a whisper in a quiet forest. Her fingers moved slowly, carefully, with emotion in every movement. This was not just a performance. It was a story. Her story. The audience sat motionless, captured by the sound, unsure of what was happening but unable to look away. No one had expected this. Not the students, not the parents, and definitely not Mr. Howard, who was still frozen backstage, arms crossed, jaw tight. This wasn't in his plan. This wasn't supposed to happen, but it was happening, and Lily was owning every second of it as. The piece grew louder and more dramatic. Lily's body moved with the rhythm. Her fingers flew across the keys, striking fast notes with confidence and precision. All those months of practice, all the hours she had spent alone in her room, crying, failing, trying again, this was the reward. She wasn't just playing Chopin. She was Chopin. His soul lived in her fingers, and she let it flow out into the world without fear. She thought about everything she had been through, the moment. Mr. Howard told her she was not good enough. The day she sat alone, heartbroken, thinking it was all over. The way her classmates whispered behind her back. The look on her parents' faces when they thought she wouldn't be performing. And she took all of it, all the pain. The frustration, the doubt turned it into music. The middle of the piece arrived at the fast, chaotic, emotional section that had always scared her. The part where she used to mess up during practice. But not tonight. Tonight her hands didn't hesitate. They soared. The piano responded like an old friend. She didn't rush, didn't freeze. She trusted herself. She trusted the music. From the back of the auditorium, people started to lean forward in their seats. Some gasped quietly. Others closed their eyes. Even those who didn't know anything about classical music could feel something special was happening. Mrs. Benton stood in the wings, a proud smile on her face, her hands gently folded in front of her. She knew this was more than just a student playing well. This was a young girl breaking free from fear and showing the world her truth. And in the corner, Mr. Howard's face was red with disbelief. His carefully planned duet had just been overshadowed by a student he had dismissed, a girl he told wasn't ready. And now, the crowd was listening to her like she was the only one who mattered. When Lily reached the final section of the piece, the quiet, emotional ending, she softened her touch. The music slowed down, almost like a lullaby. Her fingers floated on the keys, and the notes hung in the air like falling petals. She let the final chord ring out and held it just long enough to let it settle into the silence. Then she lifted her hands and let them fall gently into her lap. Silence, not a sound. For 3 full seconds. No one moved. Then the crowd exploded. Applause thundered through the auditorium. People stood up from their seats. Cheers echoed from the walls. Students clapped and shouted her name. Even some parents had tears in their eyes. The principal himself was clapping hard, his smile wide with pride. It wasn't polite applause, it was real, loud, and full of emotion. Lily looked out at the sea of people standing and cheering. She blinked, unsure if she was dreaming, but this was real. It was happening. Her parents were on their feet. Her mom had tears rolling down her cheeks, and her dad clapped with both hands in the air like he had just seen a miracle. Lily stood and gave a small bow, overwhelmed but smiling. Her heart felt light, her chest full. She had done it. She hadn't just proved Mr. Howard wrong, she had proved herself right. Backstage, Mr. Howard turned away quickly and walked toward the hallway. His authority, his control, had been shattered. In just 7 minutes, the crowd didn't care about his decision. They didn't care about his judgment. They'd seen the truth with their own eyes and heard it with their own ears. And in that truth, they had turned against him without even saying a word. As Lily walked off the stage, students gathered around her. That was amazing. You made me cry. I didn't even like classical music, but that was something. Else Rebecca came forward and hugged her tightly. You were incredible, Lily. I'm so happy you got to play. Lily smiled and hugged her back. Thank you. Mrs. Benton was waiting by the exit door. You were everything I knew you could be, she said softly, holding back tears. Lily looked at her and whispered, Thank you for believing in me when no one else did. Mrs. Benton shook her head gently. No, Lily. You believed in yourself. That's what matters. Later that evening, as people started leaving the auditorium, many parents came up to Lily and her family. They offered congratulations, kind words, and even requests to record the performance if possible. A few students from other grades asked if she could teach them how to play piano. Lily felt like she was floating. Everything felt surreal, but in the best possible way. At home that night, Lily sat on her bed, still dressed in her performance outfit. Her mom brought her a cup of hot cocoa and sat beside her. You were magical tonight, her mother said. Lily smiled. I still can't believe it. Her dad peeked in from the hallway. He made us the proudest parents in the world. She looked at them both. I almost gave up. I really thought I wasn't good enough, but you didn't give up, her mom said. That's what makes you special. The next day at school, something had changed. Lily wasn't invisible. Any more students smiled at her in the halls? Some gave her high fives. Even teachers from other departments came up to her to say how much they enjoyed her performance. She felt seen. Not just as a student, but as an artist. Mr. Howard, however, didn't say a word. He avoided eye contact with her, and rumors quickly spread that the school board had asked for a review of his conduct. Several students had come forward with similar stories, feeling discouraged, cut down, even humiliated. Lily's performance had not only inspired students, it had opened their eyes. Within a few weeks, change came. Mr. Howard stepped down from his position. The school hired a new piano teacher, someone who focused more on expression and encouragement than harsh discipline. Lily, now recognized as the school's top pianist, was invited to perform at a citywide youth music festival. She chose the same piece, Chopin's Ballade No. 1, and this time, she played it with even more strength and confidence. She wasn't afraid anymore. She had learned that failure isn't the end, it's just a beginning. More importantly, she learned that when you speak through your passion, the world listens even if it takes time. The girl who once doubted herself now stood tall. She didn't need anyone's permission to be great. She already was. Lily's unexpected performance had not only surprised the entire audience, but changed her life completely. The cheers, the standing ovation, the way people looked at her, all of it was new, exciting, and almost unbelievable. For the first time in her life, she felt what it was like to be truly heard, not just seen. She had spent so long thinking she wasn't enough, but one performance had rewritten everything. But with all that attention came something. Lily hadn't expected pressure. In the days after the showcase, people treated her like a star. Students would stop her in the hallway and ask for piano tips. Teachers would mention her in class as an example of passion and talent. Her parents received messages from other parents, some even asking if Lily could give their children piano lessons. She smiled through it all, but deep down she felt nervous. What if she couldn't live up to all this? Every day after school, she sat at her piano and practiced. She wanted to hold on to the feeling from the showcase, that power, that pride, but now it felt different. She wasn't playing for herself anymore. She was playing for everyone else. She started second-guessing her own music, getting frustrated if she hit one wrong note. The more people praised her, the more afraid she became of disappointing them. Mrs. Benton noticed the change immediately. One afternoon, she asked Lily to meet her after class in the music room. You've been very quiet lately, she said. Gently, I've just been busy practicing, Lily replied. Mrs. Benton nodded slowly. Lily, you're very talented. But don't let the world's applause become a cage. You played beautifully that night because your heart was in it. Don't lose that now. Lily looked at her, unsure what to say. She wanted to believe it was still about the music, but it was getting harder to ignore the pressure. The school had submitted a video of her performance to a regional music council. And 2 weeks later, Lily received a letter. She had been chosen to perform at the state youth music event. Only 10 students across the state were picked, and she was one of them. Her name would be in the program. There would be reporters. Music schools would be watching. Her parents were over the moon. Her mom cried when she read the letter. Her dad told everyone at work. Lily smiled, but inside, a storm was brewing. The event was just 4 weeks away. It would be in a large auditorium even bigger than her school's with nearly 1,000 seats. She would be one of the final performers. This time, she wouldn't be a surprise. Everyone would know her name in advance. Everyone would be watching. And that scared her more than anything else ever had. She practiced harder than ever. She chose a new piece, even more difficult than Chopin's Ballade. It was Rachmaninoff's Prelude in G minor, powerful, fast, and emotional. But it was also demanding. The notes seemed to mock her every time she made a mistake. Her fingers ached from long hours of playing. She barely saw her friends. Even her parents began to worry. One evening, her mother knocked gently on her door. Sweetheart, you've been at the piano for 3 hours. Maybe take a break? I can't, Lily said, not looking up. I'm not ready yet, but you'll never be perfect, her mom said softly. But that's not what makes people love your music. Lily didn't answer. She just kept practicing, trying to ignore the growing knot in her stomach. Days passed, and her anxiety grew. She had nightmares of being on stage and forgetting everything. She imagined tripping, freezing, or getting booed. The more she imagined failure, the harder it became to believe in herself. The night before the event, Lily couldn't sleep. Her fingers felt heavy. Her chest was tight. Her heart was racing. She went downstairs and sat at the piano, lit only by a dim lamp. She tried to play through the piece, but her hands shook. She made mistakes she never made before. She stopped and stared at the keys, tears filling her eyes. I can't do this, she whispered. Just then, she heard a voice behind her. Yes, you can. It was her dad. He walked in, sat beside her, and placed a hand on her shoulder. You remember that day after the showcase? He asked. When you came home glowing and we couldn't stop hugging you? Lily nodded. You didn't do anything different that night, he said. You didn't learn new tricks or become someone else. You were just you. You didn't play to impress. You played to express. That's what made people fall in love with your music. Lily looked at him with watery eyes. But this time, it's different. People expect me to be perfect.
No, they expect you to be real, he replied. And you've always been that.
The next morning, Lily dressed carefully, her fingers wrapped gently in a warm cloth. Nerves were still there, but something had shifted. She wasn't trying to be perfect anymore. She just wanted to be true to herself. When she reached the grand auditorium, the scale of the event hit her like a wave. Giant banners with the names of all performers hung at the entrance. Volunteers handed out programs. The backstage was buzzing with activity. Kids from different cities were practicing, warming up, some looking just as nervous as she felt. She was scheduled to perform ninth, right after a young boy from another school played a powerful Beethoven piece. She waited backstage, heart pounding, hands sweating. Number 9, Lily Carson, the stage manager called. Lily stood up, took a deep breath, and walked toward the stage. The lights were even brighter than she remembered. The room was full rows and rows of people staring at her. She could feel their eyes, feel the silence hanging in the air. She bowed politely, walked to the piano, and sat down. Then, slowly, she placed her fingers on the keys. She closed her eyes, and she began to play. This time, the first note didn't shake. It rang out strong and clear. Her hands moved with purpose, her body swaying gently with the rhythm. Rachmaninoff's music poured out of her like it had been hiding in her heart all along. Every movement had feeling. The audience was quiet, captivated. Her hands danced across the keys during the fast section, but she didn't panic. She let the emotions guide her, just like before. It wasn't perfect. She missed a note here and there, but it didn't matter. She was telling a story. Her story, the last part of the piece slowed, became more tender. It was like saying goodbye to something. And when the final note rang out, she held it just long enough for the silence to settle again. Then she took her hands. Off the keys, silence, 1 breath, 2 to 3. And then it came to applause. Loud, wild, joyful applause. People stood up. People cheered, some whistled, some clapped, until their hands hurt. Lily stood and bowed, her eyes shining. She had done it. Not just played the piece, but conquered her fear. As she walked off stage, a judge approached her with a warm smile. "You reminded us what music is supposed to feel like," he said. Backstage, students clapped her on the back. "That was amazing," said one girl. "So much soul." Lily smiled, exhausted but glowing. It's not because she had impressed them, but because she had been real. She had told the truth through her music. The world had listened again. When the final scores were announced, Lily didn't win first place. She placed third, but something surprising happened. The Audience Choice Award, voted by all attendees, went to Lily Carson. Her name was called out and the crowd roared. She stepped onto the stage again, holding her small trophy, her heart filled, not with pride, but with peace. Because now she knew what mattered most. Wasn't the rank or the perfection. It was the connection, and that no one could ever take away from her. Lily stood on the stage with the trophy in her hand and a glowing smile on her face. The applause still echoed in her ears, and her heart felt so full it might burst. She had just received the Audience Choice Award, and though it wasn't the first-place trophy, it meant something even more powerful. It meant the people had felt something. They had connected with her music, her emotions, her truth that night. After she returned home from the state music event, everything felt different. The air seemed lighter. Her bedroom looked brighter. Even the silence of her house felt like music. She placed the trophy on her desk and sat by the window, watching the stars outside. There was no anxiety, no fear, no pressure, just peace. Her phone buzzed. Messages started coming in from her classmates, teachers, and even strangers who had seen clips of her performance online. "You were incredible, Lily. Your music gave me goosebumps. I cried during the second part. Thank you for reminding me how beautiful life can be." Each message made her eyes water. She had never imagined that her piano could reach people this deeply, but it had. The next morning at school, Lily was greeted like a hero. Students clapped when she entered the building. Some even made a banner that said "Our Star Pianist" and taped it outside the music room. Teachers gave her high fives in the hallway. Her principal made a short announcement over the school intercom to congratulate her. The biggest change, however, was how people looked at her. Before, many had ignored her or barely noticed her. But now, when someone passed her in the hallway, they smiled, nodded, or said kind words. She wasn't invisible anymore. She was Lily Carson, the girl who played from the heart. People respected her for it. Later that week, something surprising happened. Mr. Howard, the same strict coach who had once told her she wasn't ready, who had replaced her just before the school showcase, was asked to meet with her privately in the music room. Lily was nervous, unsure of what he wanted, but she agreed. When she entered the room, he was sitting at the piano bench, looking more tired and quiet than she had ever seen him. "Lily," he said, "please, have a seat." She sat across from him, her heart pounding. He took a long breath and looked her in the eyes. "I want to start by saying I was wrong." Lily blinked, surprised. She hadn't expected that. "I misjudged you," Mr. Howard continued. "I focused too much on technique, and not enough on passion. I saw a student who I thought needed more time, more polish, but what I failed to see was your heart. And when I watched the recording of your performance, I realized what I missed. Lily didn't know what to say, so she simply nodded. I also want to apologize, he added. It's not just for the way I spoke to you before the showcase, but for making you doubt yourself. That wasn't fair to you, and it wasn't right. There was a long pause. Then Lily said softly, I've learned a lot since then. Mr. Howard nodded. Yes, you have. And I've learned something too. Music isn't just about perfect timing and clean notes. It's about connection. And you've done what most musicians struggle their whole lives to do. You've touched people. He stood up, then handed her a small envelope. This is a letter of recommendation. For music school, summer programs, anything you choose. You've earned it. Lily took the envelope, her hands trembling slightly. Thank you, she whispered. After she left the room, she felt a strange mix of emotions, relief, pride, and a kind of quiet closure. The man who once doubted her had now admitted his mistake. But more importantly, she had moved forward without needing his approval. And now, she had both her self-respect and his respect. Weeks passed, and Lily's life continued to grow in new directions. She was invited to perform at a community event downtown. She played at a retirement home where elderly listeners cried and held her hand afterward, telling her how her music reminded them of their youth. A small girl even asked for her autograph after one of the performances. Lily began to teach younger students once a week, helping them not just with notes and rhythm, but with confidence and expression. She would often say, "Don't worry about impressing people. Worry about expressing what's in your heart." One of her students, a shy 9-year-old named Emma, told her after a lesson, "I want to be brave like you when I grow up." That simple sentence stayed with Lily for days. Her relationship with her parents also deepened. They had always loved her, but now they saw her in a new light, not just as their daughter, but as someone with strength, vision, and a gift that needed nurturing. Her mom would often sit with her during practice, and her dad helped her record videos of her music to post online. Together, they started a small YouTube channel called Lily Plays from the Heart. It grew slowly at first. A few dozen views, then a few hundred. But soon, people began to share her performances, and her channel reached thousands of subscribers. Comments poured in from different countries, Japan, Brazil, Germany, people she had never met. All touched by her music. "I don't understand a word," one comment read, "but I felt everything." Another person wrote, "My mom is in the hospital, and your piano video helped me cry for the first time in weeks. Thank you." Lily would sit for hours reading the comments, tears silently running down her cheeks. Music had always been her language, and now the world was listening. By the end of the school year, Lily received a special letter from the State Music Conservatory. She had been awarded a scholarship to attend a prestigious summer music program. Only 10 students in the entire state were selected. Her parents hugged her tightly when she opened the envelope. It felt like another door had opened, one she had never imagined would be possible. She spent the summer at the conservatory surrounded by students who loved music as much as she did. The instructors were kind, the days were long, and the learning was intense, but Lily thrived. She explored new composers, wrote her own music, and collaborated with violinists and cellists. She even performed one of her own compositions during the final recital, a soft and emotional piece inspired by her own journey. The applause she received was quiet but deep, and when she stepped off the stage, her instructor said, "You don't just play music, Lily, you speak with it." When summer ended and she returned home, she had grown not just as a pianist, but as a person. She was more confident, more calm, and more sure of who she was. One rainy afternoon, she returned to her old school to visit Mrs. Benton. The music room smelled the same wood polish, paper, and a hint of chalk dust. Mrs. Benton looked up and smiled. "Our star has returned." Lily laughed and hugged her. "I just wanted to say thank you for everything." Mrs. Benton looked at her proudly. "Lily, all I did was open the door. You were the one who walked through it." They sat down at the piano together, and Lily played a soft melody, something new she had composed. Mrs. Benton closed her eyes as she listened, a tear rolling down her cheek. As the final note faded, she said, "One day you'll play on the biggest stages in the world." But no matter how far you go, never forget where your music comes from. Lily nodded. It comes from here, she said, placing her hand over her heart. Years later, that would be a quote written beneath her name in music magazines, concert programs, and interviews. It comes from here. Lily Carson, once an overlooked student, whose solo was canceled, became one of the most loved young pianists in her country. Her story was featured in local newspapers, then national ones. Her journey inspired documentaries, school curriculums, and music teachers who now reminded their students not to judge talent only by perfection. And whenever Lily took the stage, whether in a grand concert hall or a small cafe, she closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and remembered the moment it all began, not with a trophy, not with fame, but with a simple decision to believe in herself. And that belief lit up the world.